What up?
How come you look so much different on this podcast? But I just saw you go on Beatty. I think his name is Brady Farrell's podcast. Is that his name? Or Beatty Farrell?
Beatty.
Beatty. You look so skinny in that podcast. Like your face was ripped. I don't know how this happened. Then you come back on this podcast and you're like,
oh wait, I was wearing a hat. That hat makes my face look skinny.
oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
How you doing?
Yeah, but I also binge like a motherfucker. I'm dieting now, dude. I'm gonna get shredded. Fuck it. I ate like fucking ass over the weekend.
What did you eat?
We had friends over. We watched the fights. I had pizza, snacks. I mean, wings. On Jackson's birthday, I had the cake. I mean, dude, it's just all stupid, it's bad.
my wife has been like, my wife has been trying to cheat with food a little bit, but she can't eat like very sweet stuff or anything like that because it's concerning for the baby. So we've been ordering barbecue, like Texan barbecue, St. Louis barbecue, Mississippi, every kind of barbecue. I'm now becoming a little bit of an expert on barbecue, especially brisket.
So I'm sure your protein's higher then.
Yeah, I'm eating a little bit more protein actually. I shouldn't have been. So I went to start going back to the gym. Yeah. What I was trying to explain to you on text, by the way, didn't come out right. It's what Don Long. Did you see the interview with Don Long on muscular development? So he mentioned the same thing that I was talking about, but he was talking about in terms of recovering from I think his kidney transplant or when he was on dialysis. He said he went back to the gym and people were like explaining to him how to lift weights. Because like he looked like he couldn't lift weights or couldn't lift weights. Yeah. So the same thing's happening to me right now. I'm going to the gym. I look like a guy who's never been into the gym before. It's so awkward and it's such a weird feeling. And I'm so sore.
Did he talk about his kidney issues on there?
Oh yeah, it was a great interview, Boston. Okay, wonderful.
I'll check it out tonight. What's on MD?
Yeah, it's on MD. It was a amazing interview.
Did he talk about contest prep on dialysis or no?
Yeah, he did. Well, he didn't go too much detail, but he said basically, because he didn't have to worry about his kidneys, so he was able to use. But what he said is that when he used AAS, when he had the kidney issues, when he was on dialysis, he got to 240, whereas he would have been, he thinks, like somehow 280 or so on stage. So he said even though he was taking stuff, he still wouldn't respond the same way he used to.
He told me he didn't take as much either.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But he was saying it was a life changer, moving to the once a day nightly one.
Oh, yeah, everyone says it's a big difference.
You know what I didn't know that he mentioned? He mentioned that cadaver, like if you sign up for a kidney donor, you often get cadaver kidneys, meaning the person's already died, and then Correct. They give you the kidney. He's saying that those kidneys don't last as long. I had no idea about that.
Yeah, correct. Living donors last longer. That's what they say. Correct.
Fascinating. So yeah, it was a really interesting.
So you get like a donation from your girlfriend or wife. Supposedly, living donors, I've seen people talk about them that they've lasted 20, 25 years with a living donor.
Oh, yeah, certainly. I've seen that. Yeah, it lasts a very long time. And even potentially, I think even more than that. But anyway, I was going to ask you, so I thought you were losing body fat, by the way. I thought you were trying to cut. You just slipped up?
I was, and then and then I did. My buddy came down here from Korea. He's in the, by the way, I finally did shrooms. We could talk about that later. But my buddy came down and, from Korea, and we just ate. Like he came down twice, and we just started doing cheat meals. I started doing a cheat meal every day, and it kind of spiraled from there.
Is he Korean?
No, he's just there for military.
Oh, okay, cool. My best friend's actually Korean. Anyway, we have a lot of questions. I'm waiting for Tony. I thought Tony would be here already. Yeah, but we have a lot of cool questions. It's like a collision of worlds. You and Tony in the same podcast. It hasn't been for a while, right?
I've never done a podcast with him, but you remember we collabed in 2017.
Exactly. So what are you doing in terms of thyroid while we're waiting for him? We were talking about thyroid.
So right now I bumped the thyroid up, which I'm going to be lowering it once I'm lean. Once I get to where I want to be lean-wise, I'm going to lower it. Right now I'm at 100 T4 and 37.5 T3.
Okay, so that could be why the TSH is still. Is it like 4? You said?
Oh no, I haven't checked. No. My TSH is 3 with 100 T4 25. So my maintenance is 100 T4 25 T3, and my TSH is like 3.5.
I wonder, since you probably had a higher TSH for a long time, if you wanted to lower TSH a little bit further to like 2 or so. I bet you could do that.
That's why I bumped it to 37.5. So maybe I'm lower now because my maintenance is 25 the thyroid. Now I'm at 37.5.
Yeah, but the thing about it is that the T4 is the one that halts TSH. It's not T3. So the more you raise T4, even though it's not all converted to T3, it's a potent inhibitor of TSH, which is the growth signal to the thyroid.
Well, I don't know about that because I always keep the T4 about at 100. And I'll give you an example: 100 T4 and 12.5 T3. My TSH was still like 5. I was like, screw that. So then I kept the T4 the same and just added an additional 12.5 T3, and then my TSH went down to 3.
If you change your T4 to 150, does it reduce further?
I haven't gone that high in a while. I always keep it at 100.
Interesting. Okay, so we should probably start with some questions.
Your friend recommended I do 100 T4 and 37.5 T3. That guy that you connected me with.
Memo? Yeah, he's really, exactly. He's really into thyroid replacement. That's like his specialty. He's really cool. Yeah,
I got to ask you. So I watched one of Nick Trigili's videos because Bo told me about this Mike Wills guy went on Nick Trigili's podcast about talking about Milos's insulin protocols being dangerous. And I looked in the comments and somebody asked him, "What's up with you and Leo or whatever?" And he's calling you by your name, Leth. He was like, I don't know, Lee. He goes, "Did you see the comments?"
No, I don't know, but it's his stuff.
This is what he said. I was like, what the fuck? I wanted to ask you about it. He was like, "What's up with you and Leo?" This guy says, "I only know Lath Abdullah Algaz." Who's Leo?
Oh, is that what Nick said?
Yeah, that's what Nick says.
Are you serious? He thinks that, man, my name is written in Arabic on my Instagram, bro. It says Lath Abdullah Algaz on the other side. It says it in Arabic. Oh, okay, if you're Arabic, you can read my name. Nick, the idiot, doesn't realize I wrote it in public, the dumbass. He thinks he's doing something to hurt me. Man. You know what's funny in Boston? I deleted this stuff I said about Nick on the last podcast. It didn't come out.
What stuff?
Because I was making fun of him. I thought it was too harsh, so I cut it out of the thing. But man, if he wants to do that, we make a special podcast about him.
Before you even posted it?
Yeah, I didn't show it because I thought it was too hard. I don't want to, whatever. But we could make a special podcast about Nick. I won't cut this part out. Nick, I want you to know, me and Boston can make a special podcast about you.
Oh man,
it could be called The End of Nick Trigili.
He would be done.
Oh, Tony's here. Why does Tony look like he's in a nightclub, even though it's clearly his apartment? We can't hear you yet, Tony.
He's not popping up.
Oh, you didn't see him? He's there. He has a pink background, pink lighting in the background.
Yep, it's pink and red, and
I see. It looks like a stripper room.
Yeah, it follows the color scheme of the bars here in Pattaya, Thailand.
How you doing? It's been a long time.
Yes, good. Good to see you guys. Exciting stuff. I have no idea what we're talking about, but I'm ready for anything.
Well, what we do is me and Boston have a weekly podcast. You know, we used to talk about current events, but usually we take question and answers from the audience. So this week I asked the audience for questions for both of you, and we have about 17 questions to go through. But beforehand, I wanted to ask you, Tony, because the last time I had you on the podcast was quite a while ago, or I think I had you one time other than then, but it was before the Olympia. So I wanted to ask you, you know, obviously everyone knows the Enhanced Athlete sponsored Big Ramy. And, you know, originally there was a weird kind of like a slight blowback or negativity from the bodybuilding niche commentators, some of them saying, you know, why would Ramy join a brand like Enhanced Athlete? I didn't understand this commentary, to be honest with you. From my perspective, I didn't really understand it. Are you still dealing with that kind of negativity, or has it? Because I see you guys are advertising more. It's
yeah. I didn't hear anything really direct and aggressive about it, but it was just kind of like, wow, it was kind of shocking because Ramy or anybody who's in the top level position has to be playing to the mainstream. That's how they're going to make the most money and be able to grow in the industry. Unfortunately, you know, honesty is not usually the value of most industries when you get mainstream, including bodybuilding. But with Ramy, you know, we're keeping him on the clean side of things. So I'm known for the dark side of bodybuilding and really hardcore stuff and experimental chemistry. But Ramy's going to stay with the mainstream supplement line. So Enhanced Athlete is the international hardcore stuff, and Enhanced Labs is the mainstream stuff. So it's kind of funny because here you have me, who's like, you know, talking openly about steroids and performance enhancement chemistry. And then you have Ramy, who's the biggest bodybuilder in the world, clearly using all the best chemistry, but he's not able to talk about it. And I am able to talk about it. So yeah, it's funny for us that know who really what really goes on, but for the mainstream, which Ramy actually helps get into the actual mainstream, like not people that are watching you, me, or Boston, right? That's not the mainstream. Ramy is in the full on mainstream and more international than United States actually.
Well, this is certainly not the mainstream. This is actually, I was going to say this is, I don't know if you're a fan of Seinfeld's, but George Costanza once said worlds colliding when his two friend groups met each other. I was thinking Tony Hughes and Bostin Loyd on a podcast is worlds colliding. I know you guys filmed together before, but this is quite exciting, I'm sure, for the fans as well. Also, another thing, Tony, you know, I followed you for the whole time you were on YouTube from the very beginning. So I remember how big the enhanced athlete movement was before it started getting censored so heavily. And now your YouTube channel, which I want to tell the audience about, is called Tony Hughes Censored. It is growing slowly. It's at, I think, 15 now, which is incredible. Big difference from a few months ago. Right. Are you able to communicate? I know your Instagram is censored. You know, you have trouble on YouTube. How are you able to communicate with and has your followership sort of just not been able to find you over the years? Have you lost? How is the communication going?
So the way I really see the impact is when I meet someone in the gym and they go, "Oh, Tony Huge. Oh, wow. You know, I used to love watching your videos, but I can't find you anymore." And so I tell them, okay, I have this Instagram. Okay, this is shadow banned. That's shadow banned. Yeah, I'm censored across everything. So it's hard to reach people. If people really want to find me, they can. And so what you're seeing is like a really strong core audience that will find me anywhere. So like when I announced on Instagram, I have a new Instagram account. I got up to 10,000 followers pretty quickly. And then after that, it plateaus because that's the 10,000 people that will follow me anywhere. The rest of the mainstream or the people who are peripherally following me are always going to have a hard time finding me. That's just how it's going to be.
One last thing I want to ask you. Today, I was just looking through your videos on your channel. Before we get to the audience questions, you had a video about IGF-1 LR3. And I found this fascinating myself because I've never had the opportunity to use what this like Increlex thing. I don't know if it even is real, to be honest with you. I don't know if it's but I've never used it. I've used your IGF-1 LR3 historically, and I noticed something from it. Basically, I noticed the sort of some of the feeling of how you look on a little bit of Anadrol. Like you retain a lot, that feeling of retention. Right? So I want to ask both you and Bostin, like, because in the industry, there's this big impression that there's only real IGF-1 and everything else is fake. Is that true? First you and then Bostin. Both of you, I'm sure, have a lot of comments on this.
I think that those statements came primarily from Rich Piana and from Dave Palumbo.
Yeah, the second.
So, you know, whether it's true or not, the fact that they said it is why that belief became so popular. I've experimented with a lot of different IGF LR3, and I found that some did nothing and some worked really well. I went to Oxygen Gym in Kuwait, and I was searching for the hidden steroids of Machu Picchu and many other things, including IGF and Increlex. I actually tried to get Increlex there, and it was a lot harder than I thought. So I thought, okay, everybody's using Increlex. Truth is, they're using IGF LR3.
Oh, right.
So that's what really opened my eyes up to it. Now, Coach Trevor was always trying to convince me IGF LR3 is a waste of time. Just use IGF Des and inject it 6 times per day. And I said, that's not my lifestyle. I'm not going to, I mean, I know what it's like to inject 6 times per day. I've done it before, and I can't consistently do something like that. So I keep interviewing people, asking people behind the scenes about IGF LR3, what do they really use? You know, a lot of people don't use it at all. A lot of people just use growth and insulin because that converts to IGF. So they're like, why do I need IGF LR3? Okay, well, maybe it's a financial thing. It's cheaper to use IGF LR3 than it is larger amounts of growth hormone. And then Pup, this mass monster here in Thailand, who's got legs the size of Big Ramy. I mean, big in person, like the largest legs that just struck me as just absolutely massive. It was like Big Ramy and Pup. Like these are the two that my jaw dropped, right? So Pup here uses IGF LR3, but only when he's really trying to put on a lot of mass. Like it's the last thing he adds on top of everything else. So I think it is legit. I think not all of it's legit. I think maybe it's sensitive to light and heat, and so it degrades. So maybe people are getting it when it's not potent. I think that people aren't using enough of it because Dave Palumbo did the videos before talking about how if you get real IGF, you should only need 10 micrograms. But you have pup using, like 300, 400 micrograms per day, which is ridiculous dosage. I've never heard anybody else use that dosage. But just as an example, the difference, you've got someone that says, holy cow, this stuff really works at 400 micrograms. And then you've got someone else saying that anything over 10 micrograms of the real stuff is too much. So it can be really confusing to people. I understand. Yeah.
Actually, there's a similar thing about testosterone. Dave was saying about testosterone. Now, I don't know much about testosterone, but apparently it has some validity. And it was Boston. What was your experience with IGF-1?
So IGF-1 was actually one of our better sellers when I had 3cc research. And as long as you get a good manufacturer for it from China and it's real, the stuff works amazing. I mean, you'll be fuller, you'll put on lean muscle. I have my clients use it. And Tony said something about, Dave Palumbo had 25 micrograms on my plan. And when I worked with him in 2013, I remember the first time I ever used real IGF-LR3, I got my best response, like the very first time. And that's the same for my clients. The very first use they use it, they could use 25 micrograms and get amazing results. As you get more experience, you're going to have to use more, like 50 MCGs bilaterally, or even I think I'm up to like 100 MCGs bilaterally into the muscles trained. But yeah, no, there's definitely real IGF-LR3 out there. That's for sure.
All right, beginning with our questions from subscribers. Francesco Gianninali, who's a long-term Italian subscriber who has a channel as well. He wanted to ask you guys, I would like to know what Tony and Bostin think about sub-Q versus IM injections for TRT and AAS. So this is a persistent question, honestly. They ask very often. I sometimes avoid the question because I know everyone's talked about it, but people want to know what are our opinions on sub-Q injections.
I don't do them for oils, but I have done them in the past to experiment with it. I understand the benefit being slower dispersion, so less frequent injections possibly required. And of course, if you're worried about the gear, it's very dangerous to inject something not safe directly into the vein. It's semi-dangerous to inject straight into the muscle, and it's a lot less dangerous to inject into the fat, because if you have a problem, it's very easy for your body to encapsulate it and deal with it, or have it cut out or whatever. But once you get over a certain amount, like more than a half cc, and you inject into the fat, it's a kind of an uncomfortable feeling, and it's quite unsightly if you're very lean. And I'm pretty lean. Let's do it. Let's do an ab check. Let's see.
Oh, he is quite lean. Wow. You just stay lean all the time, huh?
Yeah.
Me and Boston look like too. We just don't want to show you.
So imagine like you're going to inject in this little bit of fat right here. Well, you're going to have a half cc of oil pocket right there. So if you're lean, it's not really appealing.
Have you done it, Boston?
Yeah, I've tried all that, man, when I was younger. I'm intramuscular with everything. Everything I shoot in my body.
Well, there's some stuff that's IV too. Something
I IV my EPO. I've been IVing my BPC 157 TB500. I've been IVing my carnitine. I enjoy IV. I like it. I feel like a drug addict or something.
So the thing is, like the sub-Q thing, the idea of having like a really slow dispersal, it's interesting that we're so obsessed with that. Obviously, we're obsessed with it because of the metabolism of testosterone, because it's metabolized into other things more frequently when it's at higher levels from baseline, right? So if you're trying to get a medium level, you don't want those peaks in trust. Maybe. But the interesting thing is also we have to keep in mind that circadian rhythms are such that testosterone is not stable in people normally. In fact, it rises in the morning and declines at night, which is why soon I'm going to be doing a little intranasal testosterone experiment to see if I can boost testosterone a little in the morning just to give myself a little, to replicate those circadian rhythms as we get older. So I feel like, and who wants to be injecting their fat and have all these bubbles? Just like you said, it's horrible. Yeah, for people who haven't tried it, if you inject enough, you're going to get annoyed by it. Unless you do like a half cc once a week.
Well, yeah, believe it or not, these TRT clinics over here in Florida, they have these females injecting testosterone propionate sub-Q.
what a random suggestion. It'll be safer for them. Sonny Smith asks a broad question. He says, what are Bostin and Tony's favorite PEDs? I've never actually asked Bostin this in general. Let's say you can only pick two. Your favorite personal PEDs, the ones that you enjoy the most, or not the safest, the ones you like the most.
Test and Trend.
Okay, that's a solid bit.
Yeah, if we eliminated SARMs, let's say we're just talking steroids, gosh, Test and Trend probably, because I think SARMs can replace a lot of the things that other gear can do, but not what Test and Trend can do exactly.
How about this, Tony? How about not just steroids? Forget about SARMs. How about PEDs in general in life? So would add figure into the top?
I mean, if you had to pick two, you'd pick test and growth hormone type thing. Okay. You'd pick some of the fundamental things. It's hard to pick just two. I mean, I have probably 30 here to choose from on a daily basis, right? So choosing two is.
Hey, but Tony, it's not that easy to get stuff from pharmacies in Thailand. I noticed that since I started having clients in Thailand, you can't just walk into a pharmacy and get like HMG or recombinant FSH or anything. You got to get it prescribed, huh?
Yeah, and it's also a supply versus demand. So, certain things like testosterone are in very high demand, so the supply will meet the demand. So you can get testosterone in any pharmacy, right? You can get Proviron in any pharmacy and a lot of other things. But something like HMG, even amongst the bodybuilding community, is not as popular as it should be. It should be much more popular than it is. Exactly. And eventually it will be, and then maybe you'll be able to get this stuff out. But HMG in any pharmacy, it's just, we were talking Thailand, but just in general, like you're less likely to find it because it's just in less demand. And then yes, certain things are prescription in Thailand, but remember in Thailand, even if you can't go up to a pharmacy to just buy without a prescription, getting prescriptions is easier. Getting doctor's appointments is easier. So you can still get prescription medication far easier than you can in the United States, for example.
Is testosterone over the counter there?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
100% over the counter. Just buy it. Good prices.
Is it real?
Yeah. It's pharmaceutical grade. Bayer and Rotex are the two main companies that.
Wow.
Actually, now we bring that up, one of the questions from the audience from Signoretti for Bostin was, would Bostin have moved to Thailand if he was single and had no responsibilities to access cheap pharma grade steroids and be a full-time bodybuilder? But then someone responded to the comments saying, actually, they don't have farm grade stuff in Thailand that often. But nonetheless, would Bostin, would you have moved there? I think you would have had some fun there.
I've already thought about it.
You might still
I'm not kidding you, Leo. They said you could live like a king there. I could retire there if I had like $1 million saved. Yeah, I heard I could retire there and live like a king.
Bro, not only $1 million. If you had probably 200,000 and it was invested, you could live like a king. Basically, I think if you have 3 to 5K a month, you live very well. By the way, I know Tony left the conversation. I don't know where he is, but he's coming back. But apparently you live very well off like 3 to 5K.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking about it because, yeah, I was like, whoa, I already had that at the time saved. I was like, I'm just going to go over there and fucking live, man.
Well, also the fact that, I'll let Tony back in. The fact that, if you go to Thailand, there's just a lot of freedom. You get to travel around, exposure to people. Less costs. All right, Tony's back. Serious. I wanted to tell him about FSH. Hey, Tony.
Okay, I had to use my phone now because the computer battery died. I was doing an experiment whether you could use a different external power source, and unfortunately got the results during this. I wanted to answer though about Bostin and moving to Thailand because, Bostin's a classic bodybuilding personality. He likes his bubble. He likes his routine and he doesn't like change and variables. So I think getting Bostin to Thailand would have been very challenging, but I think once Bostin was here, he would never leave and he would find that it had everything he needs. And I think that's the case for a lot of bodybuilders. And Joe Aesthetics actually just arrived to Pattaya yesterday. He was in Bangkok before that. So he just moved over here right by me. We trained last night. And Joe Aesthetics is the same way. I mean, despite traveling all the world and all that, he really prefers every day to be a same routine, very bodybuilding focused, his diet planned, his training planned, very ritualistic. And so it's very hard for him to actually move. Like, he's been in Bangkok for a while. And then to get him to Pattaya was hard. But now once he's here, I'm sure he'll find everything he wants and he'll build a life around it. It'll be hard to get him out of Pattaya. I think Boston's the same.
I have a strong feeling. Boston, have you ever left the US?
Never. I've been to Canada. Wow. I've been to Canada once for a trip to see my grandparents, but I don't even think I needed a passport. We just drove through. But yeah, no, I don't even have a passport.
Yeah, you have to visit Thailand. I think it'd be great. So Ernesto Bullboy asks us, what are Bostin and Tony's opinions on Deca only cycles? Which is interesting because Tony just had Tyann Clark, who was on his show, who's also been on my show before. So what do you think, Bostin?
I think we talked about this last podcast. I think it's garbage.
Yeah. But they do it mainly for their hair, right? That's the main purpose of it.
Well, I just, when they talk about it for muscle gains or for bodybuilding purposes, I just shake my head.
Yeah, it's mainly for the side effects. What do you think about it, Tony? Have you tried it?
A long time ago, but I don't even remember. It was back when I first connected with Tyann about all this stuff, like 3 years ago. And I think actually I helped, like, he was known for it within his little community, but then I brought that cycle to the forefront.
Oh,
so I actually popularized it with him. So it was interesting because I got so much heat for doing that. All the bodybuilders were like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Tony, why'd you let this guy on the video, all that? But then I had people start trying it, and a lot of people actually liked it. The main reason for it, the people misunderstand the point of it, because Tyann talks so much about the science of it that sometimes people don't hear right. Like, why is someone doing this in the first place? It's for low side effects and simplicity. It is not for maximum muscle gain. It is not necessarily the most optimal. Tyann was trying to find a way that people could take gear with as little side effects as possible, with as little fat as possible, with as little few things that could go wrong as possible. So it's not for the advanced bodybuilder generally, usually. It's for like the TRT type guy.
Exactly. And I think it's interesting because if you take dutasteride or finasteride with Deca, it actually gets converted into a more potent androgen at the scalp. So you actually can't take finasteride when you're trying to do this. But if you don't take it, it ends up being apparently quite safe on the scalp, I hear from people. People have great results from doing it, to be honest with you. The people that care a lot about their hair, like they can keep their hair, be muscular, and they could never do it on test or something like that. And there also be the people that have sexual dysfunction on Deca, don't have it when they're not taking a test base, interestingly.
Hair loss is not as common as people think. Like, I've trained so many people, and it's very rare that my clients lose hair, and I have them on all sorts of compounds.
That's true. Get some Arabs in your client base and their hair will be gone. Arabs or Iranians, it'll be done.
I actually do have a good amount of Arabs.
Are they not balding? Seriously?
No.
Oh, that's just luck of the draw, though. Okay, so David.
So wait, Leo. The day before yesterday, a guy came up to me in the gym. He's maybe 65, maybe almost 70, but a good-looking, fit guy, and he told me, he said, I watched that old video, you did with this guy before, I'm going to do the tren only cycle. I started the tren only cycle. I was like, wow, this is interesting. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like 400 milligrams a week. I was like, what? I mean, this guy's like 70 years old.
What
right?
the fuck?
So it turns out the next day he came back and we had a huge discussion about it. And I was like, I don't think that's really a good idea. I said, but not that tren is a bad idea, but maybe you could use a lot less than that. Maybe you should use a little bit of test. And then the next day he came back and he said, oh, I mean Deca. I said tren, I meant Deca. I'm like, oh, okay. So he's talking about Tyann's Deca cycle. So then he's adding in Dbol too. So he's taking 400 milligrams of Deca per week, and he's taking 40 milligrams of Dbol per day spread throughout the day. And I said, okay, that's fine. But like for your age and considering the liver toxicity and the fact that you don't need that much androgens with the amount of muscle that you have, I said, why don't you just consider 10 milligrams Dbol in the morning, 10 at night? That way you can still do the experiment, but you're going to be a lot less likely to get side effects. And I think you'll get all the benefits you would have gotten with 40 milligrams. So that's where it ends. I think that's a good update because Tyann's also not just saying DECA only. He's also saying, okay, if you want to add a test, don't add test, add Dbol, which is an interesting.
That's a cycle that my dad in my dad's era they used to run is Deca Dbol.
Really? You must add that for the kind of estrogenic effects maybe from the Dianabol. Maybe it doesn't work badly with the DECA, I guess. Is that why? Or why would he choose? Yeah.
I don't know, but a lot of bodybuilders in the 80s, they would ran DECA and Dbol.
Interesting. Okay, so interesting question from IKC, a longtime listener. He says, for Tony, what are your favorite nightlife streets in Pattaya? How about BKK? Which city do you prefer and why? BKK or Pattaya?
I prefer Pattaya, and BKK is fine, but it's more expensive and it's a little bit more salesy. Pattaya, the girls are in Bangkok to make money, right? Everybody's in Bangkok to make money. But people live in Pattaya just because they love it, because it's a beach town, right? So you don't get sold as hard as you would in Bangkok. But also Bangkok has some of the most beautiful women in the world because they can go there and make money. And Pattaya has more of the girls that also like to party and maybe not as beautiful as some of the ones in Bangkok. But in Pattaya, I like Soy 6 because this is a street of like all the younger, playful girls. So they're like 18 to 24. There's probably, on the street at any one time, even now with lockdown stuff, when the bars are open, there's still probably like, 300 girls on the street. And with the few amount of tourists there are right now, there may be like 20 tourists for 300 girls on the whole street.
Wow.
So the ratio is unbelievable. And then you've got Walking Street. I don't really like in Pattaya that much. I think that's more tourist. Like the more fun bars that cost a lot less. I also like LK Metro and Soy Boomerang near LK Metro. And then in Pattaya, there's so many small streets everywhere. You can hop on a motorbike or just walk around. And all of a sudden you'll pass this street and then that you would never guess was there with a strip of bars and party places. And you just walk down there and you get to walk down the street and you get to see hundreds of girls just walking down the street. So you get to see which one catches your attention, which one you like the style. I like the playful, happy, fun style. So if I see a girl's like really outgoing and fun, like, oh yeah, we could do pictures, we could do videos, we can party, we can dance. But some guys like the really uptight look girls, the girls that act really shy or act like they're really difficult to approach. So there's certain bars that have that theme and there's certain girls that have that theme. It's fun. Every day is an adventure.
Most people speak English, Tony?
Their English is kind of like talking to a second grader or like a kindergartner. No, talking to like a kindergartner. Pigeon. Yeah, they call it pigeon when broken. Yeah. So, by the way, Tony, have you ever been to Bahrain when you're in Dubai? I think you might. It's not nearly as good as Thailand, but it's a little it's slightly similar. Bahrain is near Kuwait and Dubai. It's a coastal city or coastal country. It's like a party town for Saudis. They go there on the weekend. And it has similar things like a lot of women, girls, fun girls that you can see on the street. Like you can pick on the street. You go hotel to hotel. And there's like a major street there also. They have that in Dubai, in Bar Dubai at 1 or 2 in the morning in a street called Naif. By the way, if any of the listeners know, they'll know what I'm talking about. But it's not as good in Dubai. It's mainly because it's not as allowed. So it's not as public. You really have to, but there's one street that's public. But Bahrain is really public. If you ever get a chance to go to Kuwait again, you should stop by Bahrain, the more fun neighbor. Slightly more fun. Okay, it's on the bucket list. But one of the reasons I like Thailand and Southeast Asia is the cost of living is so low, wages are so low. Girls don't need a lot of money, and they're not here to make in Pattaya. They're not here to make huge money. They make a little bit of money, send home, and they like to party. Really, most of the girls do this because they love doing it. So you don't really feel like you're getting sold on anything. I don't feel like I'm paying. I pay less to pay for girls in Thailand than I ever spent on women just bringing them to dinner or just paying for things in the US. So to me, I don't feel like I'm paying for it. I feel like it's just fun. Well, actually, I did a video. So I have a YouTube channel, Relationship Starts Tomorrow. And I did a video where I get sort of a hidden camera thing about how I say goodbye to a girl that I had brought over for a first date to my condo. And it's me saying, hey, I know you didn't ask for money, but I know the game in this town is, if you don't have a job, clearly you get supported by men. So I want to support you for the time you spend
with me, and I gave her $30. She spent the whole day with me and did everything that I could have ever wanted a girl to do. And she was very happy with that. And in her mind, you can see in her face, she's like, he gets it. He gets it. No. Because I'm not a prostitute. In her mind, she's not a prostitute. Mm-hmm. She's a girlfriend that if you want her full time, you pay for her full time. If you want her part time, you pay for her part time. So if I want her one day, I pay for her. But then still, I get to have for the cost of having one girlfriend. Let's say a girlfriend costs $1,000 a month in Thailand to have like really awesome girlfriend do everything for you. Instead of putting all of that into one girl, I could have a different girl every day. So 30 girls, but still only spend $1,000 in that month. Or what I like to do is I like to pick like six main girls and then rotate between them and sort of build long-term relationships with them. And for the time that they spend with me, I do support them, and it's very inexpensive.
Now, $30, what is that equivalent to over here in the US?
No, he's saying $30 US, right? Or are you saying
so
baht?
$30 US is 1,000 baht. And that would be the equivalent of paying a girl in the US, like as far as what they could buy for that money, that's probably like giving a girl in the US like $150 or maybe, it's probably the equivalent of giving a girl $150.
Okay.
But that's incredible. No, those prices. Sorry, I shouldn't have recommended Bahrain. So Bahrain is cheap. It's not like Dubai. They're like $300 a night, but that's way, way cheaper. I mean, that's incredible.
That's why I wanted to contrast it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, it sounds like a really fun life, especially with the realness of some of the people, because it's not totally commercialized the way you're describing it to me. Like maybe they're living that kind of lifestyle, but they're not just trying to milk you for money. You know what I mean? A girl, you go to the store, you just walk down the street. You can pick up any girl on the street and she's just hanging with her friends or whatever. And it's like a normal relationship thing. It's just that if you go on a date with her and you sleep with her and you don't give her money, then in her mind, she's going to go, well, why go with him when I could go with a guy that is going to do the same thing for me, but also pay for me? And, there's languages of love, right? And in Thailand, money and support is love. Like to Asian cultures, support is an expression of love. Okay, Tony, I'm going to ask you a deep question because I know that you're actually a very romantic, naturally, and sensitive person. I know this from our original discussion. What I want to ask you. By the way,
I'm not crying. I have a eye infection because a bug flew in my eye at the gym. It makes my eyes water. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, we can't see it. No, I didn't mean it that way. Okay. No, but what I was asking is this. So do you ever feel like because I know you were hurt when you were younger in America in a deep long-term relationship that you had, and you learned over time that you had to sort of give yourself defenses by having options, by having security, to let yourself be the best that you can, even in that individual relationship. The question is, after all these years of maybe being around women that potentially up front want something from you, which of course could be better than someone not up front wanting something from you. But do you ever start to question, like, does anyone close to me really love me for me? If I lost, for example, my public image or my financial ability, do you ever get those fears that everyone's somewhat using you a little bit? I mean, I felt that before myself. That's why I ask.
Yeah, with the girls, no. Actually, I mean, some of the girls like the fame type of thing, and that's like a fun novelty. But really, these girls in Thailand's requirements for a relationship and for love and to take care of you is really just a little bit of respect and a minimal amount of financial support, which I will always be able to give them a little bit of respect. And the low amount of financial requirements that these women have is something that I would always be able to provide. Even if I lost everything I had, I could just start personal training people in the gym and make enough money to support this type of woman. Now, what I do feel is lacking is like a deep love and understanding for me as an individual and all the unique and special things about me, because I can date one of these women in Thailand for probably months and they still won't fully understand what I do, where I've come from, really deeply who I am. On the other hand, all Thai women understand men as a man and masculine energy more than American women do. So at first, and you go on a first date with a woman, she already understands you more than Western women would understand you, but it just plateaus. So what's amazing in Thailand is I can go on first dates and feel like it's love on the first day, feel like I'm already in a relationship and like there's love and understanding and passion, but it hits a point where it's a plateau where like she can't really get to know me any deeper because it's not relevant to her. To her, it's like, okay, he's a man, you know, kind of like if a man was saying pussy's pussy, it's kind of like a woman saying, dick's dick and money's money, you know?
I know. I feel like I know what you're talking about. What you mean by them understanding you quicker, is it the culture, the femininity and masculinity relationship they have in their culture is more attuned to what you are naturally? And whereas you may feel like American women don't understand masculinity or femininity, you feel that naturally from them. Is that what you meant?
Yes, that's right. And also in these cultures where usually women hang out with women more and men hang out with men, like India would be the extreme example. Like you never see men and women hanging out together. It's always all the men do this and all the women do this. Muslim cultures as well, right? Yeah. So Thailand and Asian cultures are a little bit like that too. Like the girls like to go out with their friends and do that thing. They don't need a man to do every activity with them and bond with them on all these levels. They need the man for the dick and the money. And like, you know, some emotional support at night to talk to someone a little bit. That's about it.
The roles are more clearly defined. Do you ever notice this also when you're like with someone that may know a limited sense of Tony? Do you become that limited Tony when you're with them? So like you can be, so for example, say you're not having deep conversations with a lady. When you hang out with her, will you be less deep also and be more, light-hearted or see the world differently? And when you're someone that understands you more deep, you become your real self, which sometimes may be too heavy for you. So you want to be with someone that's lighter. Does that happen to you also?
Exactly. I couldn't say it any better. So you nailed it. Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next question. So Brenton Vance asked, do you all agree with the 1 + 1 = 3 when it comes to anabolics? As I'm getting older, I just enjoy running test alone, but at higher dosages. What do you think, Tony?
But go Boston first, because
yeah,
then I'll talk about like the different.
1 + 1 = 3, where you could you're saying get better results running more of one drug?
No, he says that running 2 drugs is often better than running 1 drug at a higher dose.
I would agree that running 2 drugs at a moderate dose is better than 1 at a high dose. Yes.
It must be, because the drugs work at different receptor sites. So if you're just using testosterone, you agonize the progesterone receptor very little, like 1% or 2% the amount of progesterone. But if you add Deca or Trembolone or Ment, especially, or these other things, now you hit a whole different receptor. And many people don't know this. They think estradiol is anabolic. It's actually progesterone. Women's muscle mass fluctuates according to their progesterone level, not estradiol. But anyway, what do you think, Tony?
I think you've got a law of diminishing returns for each drug you take in each pathway. And then you've got limiting factors, other growth pathways that are limiting factors. So usually what gives someone the synergy is when they're already taking something on one pathway, like let's say they're already taking a bunch of anabolics, I'll say androgen receptor agonists, right? But they aren't taking any growth hormone. Then they all of a sudden add growth hormone, and then they think growth hormone is the greatest thing ever. But that's because they went from 0 to something in a growth pathway they were giving no attention to. So then that creates the synergy. So yes, I agree with synergy.
In fact, this is one of Tony's main principles, the anabolic matrix, which basically was devoted to this. You getting picking up the low-hanging fruit and switching between different classes of drugs, which, Tony, is why I believe that erythropoietin, non-angiogenic erythropoietin, the one that doesn't increase hemodialysis or hematopoiesis, red blood cell development, I really think it can add a lot of synergy because it attacks the JAK-STAT pathway independent of growth hormone, which is a really strong growth pathway that BPC, by the way, for example, works through and things like that. Okay, so Patrick O'Rourke asked an interesting question. He says, most underrated effect from any compound in any way, performance, cognitive function, etc. I'll go first. For me, the most underrated effect that nobody seems to talk about is Dianabol is an antidepressant for me. For most people, if you take a Dianabol, you feel great. I don't know how you guys' experience, but for me, it's one of that, and then Proviron also has a resilience effect and a tenacity kind of short-term acute effect. What do you think, Bostin? What's the effect of a compound that people don't think about?
I don't know, man. I don't feel anything anymore, to be honest with you. I don't. I don't feel anything anymore. D-ball doesn't affect me negatively. Trend doesn't affect me negatively. If I take too many drugs with my issue, by the way, I took a
we have to talk about the mushrooms, yeah. Also,
well, no, I took a pain pill, a fucking 15 mg per Oxycodone, and I never used painkillers. And I got high. I ended up getting a really good workout, but when I was high, I decided to shoot 7 cc's of steroids.
When was this? Wait, what?
Last week. And, literally 5 days ago. And one of the cc's was trend suspension I shot. And dude, I felt fine. I thought for sure the next day I was going to be puking and vomiting and feeling shitty. I put everything in my lats, dude. I was shocked.
Bostin, wait a minute. We text every day. Why don't you send me this? Why don't you tell me this stuff? Let me look.
I don't want to bombard you with dumb shit like that.
Anyway, Tony.
So basically, Leo, he would be texting you every day with something like that if you open that door.
I would love it. He's very entertaining.
I random shit all the time.
Exactly.
But Bostin, what's the most understated compound? Like what? Because I'm curious what you think. What compound do you think deserves way more attention than it gets?
Oh, Masteron.
For what reason? For the look?
Yeah, I get a really good hardening effect, vascularity, and I think it's a very underrated compound that people should use even in their off-season cycles.
What do you think, Tony?
I think SARMs still deserve more attention. I think they've gotten a lot of attention, but I still think that they deserve even more attention because I think that, and my hypothesis at the beginning was, and I haven't been proven wrong, I don't think, that the weaker steroids, the slower long-term steroids, let's say equipoise, and I would have said Masteron, but that's interesting. Bostin chooses that though. And primobolan, for example, these sort of long-term, low side effect steroids that just are, keep you in anabolism all the time and decrease catabolism. Well, SARMs do the same thing with also far less side effects. So yeah, SARMs don't blow you up like a Dbol or an Anadrol, but they accomplish that long-term muscle gains without water retention and without many side effects, or with virtually no side effects for most people.
What's your favorite SARM? I just started the injectable S23 yesterday.
So I love S23. The only drawback with S23 is it's the most suppressive on natural testosterone. It's intended to actually lower fertility, which could be a great thing. I actually was using it before when I was trying to decrease my fertility. Like that was one of the purposes of using it. But I loved S23. I think for the value, the price, and for having no other side effects from it. And some of the best times I ever looked was when I was doing high dose S23 with the testosterone base.
But it's not, Tony, it's not going to affect fertility any more than testosterone would, correct?
Dose dependent. So I actually, with testosterone doesn't hurt fertility that much at lower dosages, but then we go up higher at dosage and it does. And you take something like Deca or Tren, destroys fertility. So, it's more along the lines of sort of like a Deca or Tren as far as lowering fertility.
The reason why I ask is I'm currently trying for number 2. This is our first month, but I'm taking I'm on S23 and I'm on a bunch of other stuff too. But I'm also doing I'm doing high dose HCG and HMG. And when I got her pregnant the first time, I was on a gram of Tren. So.
Yeah, you might be offsetting it by taking the HCG and HMG and Clomid and all these type of things. I actually was trying to have another child recently and did actually. She got pregnant and she miscarried.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just 4 to 6 weeks afterwards. But so it worked. I took just a break from gear, or I lowered the dosages. I never took it off. I just went down to TRT and I took all these, HCG, Clomid, HMG, a bunch of other stuff. And even with my low sperm count, I think 2.6 million, and normal is above 15 million. But even at 2.6 million, I was still able to get her pregnant. So you have to weigh that. It's not like your fertility just disappears completely. It just decreases. You still have millions of sperm.
It's crazy, man. Most of my fertility clients, I don't even touch their cycles. I just say, continue to take what you're taking because I don't want to switch anything up. And I say just add the HMG and HCG, and usually they have success the first either 1 to 2 months. It's crazy how strong that stuff is.
In fact, let's warn people. Actually, there may be a reason not to go off AAS when you're trying to have a child, because
I agree 100%.
Well, a couple of reasons. There's a reason that Boston's thinking, which is totally true also. But another reason is this. Think about this. If you've been on androgens for 2 years straight or a year or whatever, your body has acclimated to the strong androgenic signaling. Once you take those androgens off, you're actually going to be hypoandrogenic. Even if your testicles produce androgens, your receptors have downregulated because of the high levels. So you're going to temporarily get less androgen signaling, which means your epigenetics will reflect a less masculine man. Temporarily. So if you're going to have a daughter, that's great. Like I'm having a daughter in 10 weeks, hopefully. So that's okay. I was not on androgens at the time. I was probably a little, but if you're having a boy, it may be concerning. So for example, for a boy, what matters most is the father's epigenetics, but then the uterine androgenic environment. So if the mother has higher androgens, that's how little girls get PCOS. Which is a hyperandrogenic effect. But if the mother has high androgens, it's a boy. That's the limitation on stem cells for example, things like penis size, masculinity. It all happens in the mother's womb. And then when she gets out, the first 3 months, I don't know if you know this, Tony, a boy has testosterone levels almost as high as in puberty. First 3 months of birth, after birth. Yeah. And then it declines, stays declined until puberty. Now, another thing I wanted to mention, Tony, interesting thing about FSH and HMG is that it is actually trophic to the gonads. It actually can grow them, even in adulthood. And that's why FSH peaks in puberty. So what I've been doing recently is I've been using a lot more FSH. Like you were saying, people should use HMG more. Because HCG will tell your gonads to produce testosterone, but it's the FSH that might heal them, that might actually grow them back potentially. I've seen the largest volume sizes changes in my gonads from FSH, not from HCG.
So Leo, what are you trying to do right now with your balls? You trying to get more fertility or what?
No. What I'm trying to do is I had some slight testicle size decrease after the years on steroids that never fully came back. It's a slight difference. I wanted to recover that. And second of all, now I started using a little bit of testosterone for like resilience and energy and stuff like that. And I want to keep my gonads working perfectly for the future children and stuff like that. So now I'm keeping 75 units of FSH every other day. And it's really fantastic and it feels great. I've had to lower my testosterone dose also because it's just too much. It's fantastic.
Yeah, in deep researching fertility and whether to stay on TRT or not, I found that some doctors will prescribe proviron and testosterone to hypogonadal men to help with their fertility. So yeah, exactly. We don't want to come off completely.
Absolutely. In fact, yeah. So AW Fitness Lover asked you, Tony. He says, ask Tony why he quit blasting, which I don't know if this is even true. And he said, any reason why he lost some size? Hopefully he doesn't have any health issues. I didn't notice that you lost much size. I don't know about that. Yeah.
Yeah. First question, why I quit blasting. I only blast ever for short periods of time. This is one of my unique theories, I think, is that I think maintaining, super physiological levels of testosterone or SARMs as a replacement for testosterone or something helps us maintain more muscle and just always feel good and look awesome. And then when it's time to actually build muscle, it's like, okay, this week or maybe 2 weeks or whatever short period of time, I think I can eat enough food and actually train hard enough. That's when I blast it. But it's actually the food is the hardest thing for me. See, Bostin, man, he does his meal prep and he's in the same house there and he's got the stability of the food. For me, it's like the schedule's all over the place. Like figuring out the food comes first. Once I know I've got the food under control, then I can choose a time to blast. But then do I even want to get that big? I can't. So I can get huge by taking things like insulin, HGH, IGF, increasing the gear and increasing the food and increasing sleep. Then yeah, I grow and I get massive. But then it's hard to breathe. I feel pressure on my heart. I actually feel like my heart is it's a terrible feeling. I don't think most smaller bodybuilders know what that feels like, but you directly can feel your heart working so hard in a very unhealthy way when you're at these huge sizes and there's pressure on your heart and there's water retention. So I'm only 220 pounds right now, but as you can see, pretty lean, like we'll say 8% body fat. But this is sort of my maintenance. And then at any time I want to jump up to 230 or 235, I can do that very quickly with just 4 or 5 days worth of gear and just glycogen loading and pulling the water into the muscle.
Isn't food cheap out there?
it's cheap. It's just, it's always hard. They don't speak English that well. So it's a little bit hard to tell them not to put oil or not to put MSG, these type of things. So if you get into a routine where you're eating at the same places, or like I have the girl, she walked across the background a little bit. Werewolf is her nickname because when she drinks, she turns into a monster. And there's scratch marks on my walls. So it's like, so she is a professional chef. So when she's around, and she comes around maybe once every 5 days and cooks my food for a couple days, I'm good for a couple days. But then when she's gone, then it's back to like ordering Grab food. That's the delivery food service here. It's up. Then I got to go pick up the chicken and rice, and I got to cook here. Oh, which by the way, the air fryers. There's two cooking devices that are. This is just too important not to show for bodybuilding, even though it's off topic. This is an air fryer, and it doesn't look like your standard air fryer. This is a top-loading one because I want to be able to see what's inside. So it's so easy. I just drop whatever in there and turn the dial, and it cooks, and ding, it's done. And then this is one of those instant hot, magnetic cookers. So I can just hit the button and instantly it's hot, faster than even fire cooking. And so I can cook very quickly with this healthy food. So I should have no excuse, actually.
Hey, but Tony, when you were mentioning SARMs earlier, I'm someone who's never used any SARM except Ostrine, but I've used most steroids. Can you explain to me how some of them compare, for example, to Anavar, in the sense that, for example, I know an S23, I wanted to also ask, is it something to do with progesterone probably that's causing it to be so halting to the system?
I don't know if there's any interaction with the progesterone receptor. As far as relating to Anavar, I think all SARMs are very similar to Anavar, actually. I think that's the closest steroid to Anavar and Primabol, and I think SARMs are very similar to.
So why would anybody use a SARM over Anavar? That's what I'm curious about. That's what I always tell people. People ask me about SARMs. I say, well, look at this. Before, historically, I didn't know what causes liver cancers for steroid users. So when I was using steroids, I tried not to use orals. And when I did, I only used orals that were very useful, like Anadrol or something like that. I used to think that Anavar could cause liver cancer. I had no idea. Later on, I did a really intensive study, a survey of all the academic papers on the subject. I read everything. And I can't find, I believe I never found one paper showing Anavar causing liver cancer. But there are tons showing, there's a couple of case reports showing Trenbolone does. We have 2 subscribers to this channel who got liver cancer, one from Trenbolone. And Anadrol certainly is very associated with it. But Anavar isn't. So I realized actually that it's the residence time and the androgenicness that caused the liver cancer. And Anavar is actually quite innocuous.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why people would use SARMs over Anavar is because they think that Anavar is liver toxic, and we know that SARMs are virtually not liver toxic. But you're right. I also haven't seen a lot of evidence of real-world liver toxicity from Anavar either. So why would someone use SARMs over Anavar? One is Anavar seems to plateau in its effectiveness. So, you take 50 milligrams versus 100 milligrams. I don't think, Bostin, what do you think? I don't think you're going to notice that much of it. I think you sort of like 50 milligrams is like a sweet spot, and then you go 100, 150, not much happens, right?
I've attempted 100 mgs of Anavar.
What?
I've never even attempted to even try 100 mgs of Anavar. I thought it was pointless.
Oh, really?
I think people that do say that there's not really much benefit over 50. For example. So you've got a plateau with Anavar that you don't have with some of the SARMs. Like you can take an LGD 4033 and you go up in dosage and the effects just keep coming. And then it comes to a point where can you eat enough and you training hard enough and all that, but you can go with a higher dosage of a SARM and get more benefit than a higher dosage of an Anavar. But if you're just taking a low dosage, here's with females, for example. Females are still more likely to have side effects from Anavar than they are from SARMs, even though side effects for Anavar are pretty low for them.
Really?
So like for a female, I still give my girlfriend SARMs over Anavar.
My female clients are majority SARMs.
So what SARMs would you, say you were a guy, not a woman, and you wanted to use something in addition to Anavar, but something like that's light, that's not so harmful for your health. I know Ostrine is weaker than Anavar, right? So you wouldn't add that onto it. What would your first choice? Is it LGD that you would choose? Either of you?
LGD 4033 for size or LGD 3303 for size. RAD 140 for stamina
muscle hardness, definition, sort of the reasons why most people use Anavar in the first place. What else am I using? I mean, S23 is also much more powerful.
I would say Austrian and Anavar are comparable in results with my female clients.
I agree.
Oh, wow. I didn't know. Okay, you guys are really schooling me. This is very helpful. Thank you so much. I never really knew much about them, to be honest with you.
So basically, Austrian is one of the weaker SARMs, but it's one of the first ones around. It's got the most studies behind it, and it does sort of like the most broad spectrum of things. And it is like if you gave someone Austrian and you gave someone Anavar, they really wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Yeah, I don't think they could feel or see any difference.
Fascinating. Okay, David Lamon asks you, Tony, can you expand on the idea of trend sensitization to IGF-1 and the use of trenbolone with MK677 or GH and insulin? I don't know. Is this something that you've talked about before?
Well, let me address the first part first because I didn't process the second one. Sure. I haven't seen the cell, resensitization to IGF from Tren. I only know this because this is something that was Coach Trevor's biggest thing he'd always talk about. Like that's the reason he would say that people use Tren for fat loss and people use Tren for this and for that. And like, there's better things for a lot of those things. But what Tren does that the other drugs don't do is sensitize you to IGF. So especially if you want to do a protocol like blasting and gaining size, adding a little bit of Tren for that effect is really helpful. I mean, separate from that, the reason why I would use Tren is definition and being able to be in a caloric deficit and not go catabolic, being an ectomorph that loses muscle easily, stuff like that, and strength and aggression, perhaps. I'm on Tren right now, but I'm only on 100 milligrams per week. And I started 2.5 weeks ago, and I'm doing such a low dosage because I don't feel any side effects from this dosage. I don't feel the anger, aggression. I think it actually might help me mentally because it makes me a little bit more focused, less distracted by drama.
Are you getting benefits though?
I think so. I think the definition, the little definition coming in, like you just sort of see lines a little bit better. And that's all I'm looking for because Joe Aesthetics is here and he's insanely shredded all the time and he's got incredible lines. And I'm just trying to see if I can, my goal is to, can I look like Joe Aesthetics with like 30% of the work by using chemistry?
That's always your goal, loopholes. Yeah, but so I agree. I think there's a lot of scientific reason to think that this may be the case because, so for example, there's an androgen paradox in hair loss. Have you ever heard of it, Tony? The paradox is this. Signaling at the androgen receptor in the dermal papilla cells in the scalp for the male produces a release of TGF beta, that's transforming growth factor beta. TGF beta is very associated with fibrosis in the body, scar tissue. So what happens here is that when you get androgen signaling at the dermal papilla here, you produce scar tissue in your scalp, which actually forces the miniaturization of hair follicles. On the other hand, when you're a man and you have androgenic signaling at the hair follicles, for example, in your beard, the hair follicles there, they release IGF-1 in response to the androgen signaling. So they actually locally secrete IGF-1, the cells there, and that causes the growth of hair follicles. So we know that androgenic signaling, I know just from that it does in some parts of the body cause IGF-1 synthesis and transmission. So there must be some major interplay between the two. It makes a lot of sense. Sean M24 asked a question that I wanted to ask Tony actually. He says, does Tony take any health pharmaceuticals like blood pressure medications or a statin? Statin is the one I wanted to focus on. I'm very curious, Tony. Have you ever used Repatha, the wonder drug for cholesterol that I may have mentioned to you before that I think would be a really attractive drug for you?
Okay, I will try Repatha. My cholesterol has been looking much better lately. I don't know. I'm trying to pinpoint exactly what it is. Maybe just been running lower dosages for a long time. I throw cardarine in every once in a while. I do use the telmisartan. That's the telmisartan.
Right.
Not every day.
How many mgs do you use of that?
So I started with 40 milligrams per day, and now I've dropped it down to 20 milligrams 5 days per week, roughly, because Coach Steve said that it was messing with his potassium, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. He just has to decrease his potassium intake. But I was like, I just don't want to really, I don't want to deal with any remote side effects. I'd rather just take a low dosage. My belief with these type of drugs is take a low dosage, get a lot of the benefit, take a high dosage, get a little bit more benefit, and then start getting side effects. So I'll just, for health purposes, just throw in a low dosage. And then my cholesterol is doing better. I think maybe more cardio too, maybe better control of my carbohydrates. I think blood sugar impacts cholesterol massively. And I think that's something that people don't address so much, like insulin sensitivity and these things. So those have been my approaches to heart health lately.
So telmisartan has massively diminishing marginal returns after around the 40 milligram dose. So that drug is like that. Whereas like the ARB in the same class of drugs that has the highest ability or the strongest efficacy at the highest dose is called azilsartan. And valsartan, which was my drug originally, which is cleaner than telmisartan. Telmisartan is an agonist of the PPAR gamma receptors, as well as being an ARB, which is why people like it. But by the way, Tony, you may not like that. See, the PPAR gamma receptors, when you agonize them, it makes the body more susceptible to holding fat. So actually, even though telmisartan has a minor effect, bodybuilders don't realize they shouldn't be taking that if they want to not be fat.
Dude, I was so much fatter when I had that in.
Yeah, it is. Nobody realizes.
When I was using telmisartan, I was holding fat, and I was blaming the beta blocker. I think it was more the telmisartan, to be honest with you. But I'll tell you what, though, Leo, going from 40 to 80 mgs in the telmisartan really lowered my blood pressure a lot. Going from 40 to 80 helped me a lot.
Really? Did it really?
Yeah, it dropped me from like 150 over like 80 down to 130 over like 75.
But didn't you feel like the valsartan at 160 milligrams was more potent than 80 milligrams of telmisartan?
The only time I ever took the valsartan, I was combining it with ramipril.
That's true. IKC had a second question I forgot to ask you guys. So he said, I have heard magic mushrooms are legally tolerated in Thailand despite marijuana being illegal. Is this true? And where can they be found? He says. But other than that, then we have to hear Bostin's mushroom story. So Tony, tell us about mushrooms in Thailand.
There's certain places, like there's certain islands and places that tourists know to go, and you know, they have this sort of hippie culture, and it's quite popular. And it's not something that the police in those areas would be interested in shutting down because nobody's ever getting hurt. It's no negative publicity. So yeah, there's certain places. I don't know that it's technically in your legal, but there's always the difference between what's legal and illegal versus what really happens. And a lot of things in Thailand are like this, where even the laws might be similar to the US, but they're just not enforced because there's no problems. Like with steroids, even though they're not scheduled illegal, they're still prescription medications that you're not supposed to be buying prescriptions without the proper pharmacy pathway or a prescription. But there's been 0 deaths, 0 harm, 0 negative publicity about steroids. So the Thai population, the government, nobody cares about them. They're not a concern. Whereas in America, you've got medical monopolies and you know, the mainstream industry that actually creates the negative publicity about anything that competes with them and uses the government to enforce against their competition. That's how it starts. But in Thailand, you have a class system where the super wealthy are untouchable. They don't need to fight to stay at the top. And so they don't need to manipulate and they don't need to control and give as much misinformation. So you have things like marijuana, for example, and this will happen with mushrooms too. I'm sure mushrooms will become a prescription medication and easy and cheap to get in Thailand sometime in the near future. But this is what's happening with marijuana also. Marijuana is going to become fully legal in Thailand because they didn't have, as long as the high class is making money off it, that's what'll make it end up becoming legal. So I think it'll become legal eventually. Right now, maybe it's illegal, but it's not bringing any negative attention, so the government doesn't waste time enforcing against it.
Actually, Tony, you're commenting on a long-standing observation from sociology, which is that when drugs are used by the lower classes, they're banned. Like this happened with marijuana famously in the US in I guess the 50s or 40s or whatever it was. That's really interesting. I wanted to ask you, Tony, living in Thailand for so long, have you ever met any of those super rich, mysterious Thai people that own everything and are like sometimes Chinese? Have you ever bumped into them? Do you ever meet them at parties or anything like that? Or they are sort of secluded from society?
Not the top level, but some still people that are connected to the top level. Yes. I've met some of these people. And I haven't really networked my way up that, and I'm sure that I will. I just wanted to make enough connections to protect myself. So if something happens to me, I've got people to call, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And then for business, if I were going to do business on a large scale in Thailand, the way it works is just like you think of the mafia or pretty much anything else in government and politics. You've got to pay the people above you to protect you. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, then they'll take you out because your competitors will pay them to protect them, which means eliminating you. So there's always money going up these channels. I mean, that's a definition of corruption, I guess, but corruption sounds like it's a rare thing when the truth is corruption is the default in every society.
That's true.
Are you living there full time?
Yeah, this is full time in Pattaya, and I have a condo in Bangkok, so I go back and forth. And this is where I live.
When's the last time you've been to Sacramento?
Yeah, when do you come?
14 months ago.
Wow. Really nice out there.
Yeah.
Green.
So that's the ocean. And then, the town, it's a tourist town. So these buildings are all 80% vacant. And you can get condos overlooking the ocean. Well, let's do a shocking thing. A condo that's near the ocean but doesn't have an ocean view for $150 per month.
What?
Are you serious?
Yeah, living expenses are really cheap. I mean, my condo here, but it's much bigger than what most people have, even though it's still small. My condo here is $575 per month.
No way, Tony. I thought it was way more expensive than that. That's really that's interesting.
Well, it's COVID time too, so things are a little bit cheaper during COVID.
Well, Boston and I are getting in a plane.
Is it do you think you'll ever live back in the United States or no?
I just don't see. I mean, if things changed, I mean, I know I'll get a lot of. Well, I'll just say the way that politics are going right now, I think the quality of life in America is going to decrease. Yeah. So it was on track to increase for a while, and then the whole COVID thing happened. If it kept along the path that it was going on before COVID hit, then I think living in places like Florida or Las Vegas would have been acceptable to me, if things got better. But with things getting worse, I don't see Western civilization in general being conducive to my quality of life.
How are the COVID regulations over there?
Well, there's what's reported in the media versus real life, just like anywhere, right? I'd say the gyms are in Pattaya. Every city is different. So kind of like the US, like Florida stays open, but California shuts down. Florida ends up having better situation than California. Like places that don't shut down end up having a better scenario. So I'm in Pattaya where things like bars are closed in 2 weeks. So what happens is if the cases go up, they close the bars for 2 weeks and they reopen, and they close them again if it goes up and they reopen. And it's a ridiculous dog and pony show. But gyms are still open. And if you know where to go, you can still get anything and do anything you want. This is why it's really not fair. All this lockdown stuff is really unfair to the poorer class or the middle class. They're getting destroyed, but the upper class is still living their life like normal and profiting off of this whole thing. So you can still do whatever you want if you have money and you know who and where to go. So I'm kind of in between. Foreigners in Thailand are kind of in between. We're not the lower class. We're not the middle class. We're not the upper class. We're like this weird entity off to the side that doesn't really compete with their class system. Mm-hmm. We are able to sort of navigate the benefits, some of the benefits of the high class, but also the low cost of the low class. So I think I'm in a really awesome position being in Thailand, and that I don't feel like, right as it is right now, I feel like the restrictions aren't really limiting me. But I was thinking about it yesterday with the bars being closed, because that's one of the main reasons to be in Pattaya. Like, is it really impacting my quality of life negatively? And then I thought, you know what? All these bar girls, they still want to have sex. They still want to hang out. They just they just don't go to the bar. And this is actually a good thing for me because I don't like to stay up late and drink. You know, I like girls and I like partying, but I like to do it early. So I can have girls come to my condo and party in my condo, and that's fine because they don't have an alternative. You know, they can't go to the bar. They just come over to the condo. It's perfectly fine for me.
That's the line from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Actually, that's really funny. I don't know if you ever watched that show.
My favorite show.
Oh, no way. Are you serious?
Yes.
I've watched it like 3 or 4 times. Oh, wow. I've really watched that show. Anyway, he has this funny episode where they go on the yacht and there's the issue of no other option being, I don't know if you've ever seen that episode.
I just watched that one the other night. How funny you say that. Maybe 2 days ago, I watched that one. Okay. Yeah. He was being really creepy about it.
Yeah, exactly. Before we end the podcast, Boss, you have to tell us the mushroom story. And also you owe me some Icelandic pictures. I've noticed.
Oh, I'll send them to you tonight.
Okay, tell us the mushroom story,
dude. Oh man, I don't even know if okay. So
Tony knows how to live.
I was going to tell you something else, but the mushroom story. There's not really too much to say, but I took a half a bottle of those liquid shrooms from Uber Treats.
Is that the right dose? That sounds like a lot.
No. He said a half bottle. You'll feel good, but you won't like completely trip. So I took a half bottle. My buddy took a half bottle, and we were high as fuck. But we were just sitting on the couch having fun. But we didn't hallucinate. He was tripping out over my blinds. Like he said, the blinds were looking kind of weird. But I told the Uber Treats guy, I said, "Hey, next time I try this shit, I want to trip out." So he told me He's gonna send me another bottle, and I'm gonna do a full bottle.
You didn't have enough, bro. If it's Golden Teacher, you should start seeing things moving. Like if you look at
I didn't get to that point. So he's sending me more to take the trip dose. Well, it's kind of my fault. I told him to give me a dose that's not too much at first, but now that I tried it, I want to try the trip dose.
Okay, just so you know. So if you take like 100 milligrams of Golden Teacher, you won't see anything moving. By the time you get to 400 milligrams, you should see things a little bit playing around, colors in your movement. You won't hallucinate till you get to like 2 grams or 3 grams or something like that. By the way, do you use, Tony, mushrooms a lot as well?
Oh, so the thing is 1 gram. The whole thing was 1 gram, I think.
Oh, that's not enough. No, that's for sure not. But it's good you start slow. Yeah, but that's... Tony, do you ever do a hero's dose? I know you're into microdosing, but do you ever use hero's doses?
So not too long ago, I did 3 grams, and a big group of friends and I all did 3 grams, and we went to an art gallery. It's one of these art galleries where you stand in the art and then someone takes a picture of you and it looks like you're in this fantasy world, which is really trippy because when you're on mushrooms and you're looking at these sort of fantasy worlds, you're sucked in, you're like, whoa, it's so beautiful. I think going to an art gallery is probably one of the best environments to be on mushrooms. Like you really can appreciate the art. Yeah. I'm not a big art guy, but
bright parks are like that also. If you go to a park at like 1 p.m. where it's a sunny day, all the leaves and everything will have beautiful. Hey, I should mention Uber Treats. That guy is no joke. His GHB is the real deal. I just wanted to say that
he sent me some. He said to only start off with 1 ml. He said, he should be in the mail pretty soon. Yeah.
No, try half a teaspoon and then wait half an hour to 1 hour. Then take another half teaspoon. The real dose is take a quarter of a teaspoon and then wait an hour, then take a quarter. The real dose is half if you take half a teaspoon and wait an hour, it should be enough.
What is that equivalent more than 2 on an ml?
I'll text you about it later, and you'll also tell me that other story. Hey, Tony, we have to thank you so much for being on our show. It's such a pleasure every time I talk to you. You're lighthearted, but have depth. And, just commenting on the potential decline of Western civilization at the end there, we didn't really comment on it, but I agree entirely. We may all be in Asia. I may be moving there also in the next few years, so we may bump into each other. It's always great to have you here, Tony. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys. Be swell and swell, friends, freedom pioneers, human evolution.
We'll talk to you soon, Tony. Bye-bye.